These men brought terror to the capital of the free world, but they also found me, a soldier at home or away, a man loyal to nothing except the dream. Today on the Comic Book Report, Captain America by Ta-Nehisi Coates Omnibus. Stick around and check it out. Greetings all, my name is Dominic and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today we're cracking open another Marvel Omnibus in the form of Captain America by Ta-Nehisi Coates. But before we dive in, I do want to give a thank you to our channel sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com. If you're trying to pick up any of your own comic book collected editions, I highly encourage you check out their website. You can find the link in the description of this video, and if you find something you like, you can even use my discount code at checkout, TheComicBookReport, to receive $2 off of your order. Please note, if you use this affiliate link or code to make a purchase, I will earn a small commission, but it's a fantastic way to support this channel. Thank you for considering. Now let's get started with today's Omnibus review. First, some quick facts about today's collection. The issues in this volume were written by Ta-Nehisi Coates and illustrated by Lanil Francis Yu, Adam Kubert, and many more. The comics in this volume were published by Marvel Comics beginning in 2018. The volume itself collects Captain America, the 2018 series, issues 1 through 30, and material from Free Comic Book Day 2018, Avengers Captain America issue 1. And finally, this oversized hardcover collection comes with glossy print paper stock pages, a sewn binding, and 696 pages. At this time, I'd like to issue a general spoiler warning. I will be flipping through the contents of today's collection and commenting on plot points throughout. You've been advised. Okay, and with that all well and done, we're diving into our omnibus proper here. Love, love, love this front cover by Alex Ross. It's absolutely stunning. I have no complaints about how this looks. This is the standard edition cover, but this omnibus also has a stunning direct market cover. I'll show a thumbnail of that really quick so you can get an idea of what the other cover looks like, and that way you can compare and decide which is best for you. Overall, I really like the spine. It is another white-spined Marvel Omnibus, so that's something to be aware of for collectors out there. I think it looks really sharp. I love the image of Captain America we get. I'm unclear if the direct market has a different image on the bottom. It may. Again, not totally sure on that. The back cover is also quite good. We have Captain America getting arrested. What an evocative image that is, certainly. Overall, I really like the dust jacket design of this. The direct market cover also looks quite good. Overall, a really well made omnibus. And now, as I like to do with these omnibus reviews, I am going to take a moment to remove the dust jacket. We're going to do one final examination of the dust jacket for this book, including the interior flaps, before transitioning to inspect the actual hardback artwork we have printed on the book itself. Again, I love the dust jacket for this book. I think it's really sharp, really modern looking, and it's going to look great on my bookshelf. I know I recently reviewed the Nick Spencer Captain America Omnibus Volume 1, so I'm right back into the world of Captain America here with the Ta-Nehisi Coates era. And frankly, I had a blast with this book, but I'll get into all of that in a second. Right now, we're going to look at the actual hardback art on this book, and I have to say, as silly as it sounds, this was a major selling point for me. I love that the under the dust jacket art for this collection is just the shield. I think it's such a great idea. I can't believe I didn't see it implemented sooner, and I just love it. I think this book looks absolutely fantastic in and out of the dust jacket. Way to go, Marvel. Man, I'm such a sucker for that shield. It looks amazing spread open. Really cool collection. So excited to have this book in the library. Okay, now a moment to go ahead and transition to the binding on this omnibus. I will say I believe it is a sewn binding, although I do see what appears to be a little bit of glue in the binding, so maybe it's both. Someone out there, please correct me if I'm wrong. I definitely see a little bit of glue in this one, but I think it's still a sewn binding. At any rate, I really enjoy the binding. I didn't really have any issues with it. This is a lighter omnibus coming in under 700 pages. I think it all laid open fairly well. A little bit of gutter loss, but nothing too critical. You'll be able to check as well yourself as we make our way through. And make our way through we shall. As we dive into the collection after the end pages, we have a cool title page before we go to the publication information and the kind of mapping breakdown table of contents we get for this collection. It is done by creator rather than an official table of contents that has page numbers and things like that. Not too uncommon for a modern omnibus, especially in Marvel. We don't really get a lot of page numbered omnibuses for modern era omnibuses. I would love to see more of that, but hey, this is what we got, and I don't really have a ton of real complaints. After that, we basically dive right into that free comic book day issue, at least the Captain America story within it. It's basically a prologue and kind of sets the stage for the Ta-Nehisi Coates era of Captain America, which follows after the Nick Spencer run on the book. Now, I will say before we go much further in this video, I have only read that first half of the Nick Spencer run, kind of leading into Secret Empire. Everything that was collected in the Captain America by Nick Spencer Omnibus Volume 1, which I mentioned earlier. I did review that on the channel. Now, I will say I skipped over Secret Empire and the back half of Nick Spencer's run. I'm waiting for that omnibus, hopefully in the future, but I decided to go ahead and read this one, so I am missing a bit of a gap here. I did the same thing, skipping a large portion of the Remender run so far. I do have that omnibus, though. I'm hoping to circle around back to it. So I've really been coming in and out of Captain America, especially these modern runs, but when I have a chance to review one of these omnibuses, I jump at it, and I find myself becoming more and more of a Captain America fan. At any rate, I bring this all up because this takes place after the Secret Empire era and that cold Nick Spencer run on Captain America. Some very important things have happened with this character, and I don't even know all of them. I definitely got some spoilers reading this, and I knew some before I went into this. Here's some minor spoilers that you will need. Bigger spoilers, obviously, for the Nick Spencer era. But basically, it appeared that Steve Rogers worked for Hydra the whole time after some really weird situations. I don't really know exactly how that wrapped up. Suffice it to say, in this era, Steve Rogers is playing major damage control. It looks like he wasn't actually the one that worked for Hydra. Again, I'm not sure how that all cleared up in Secret Empire, but I will say this is a really kind of interesting crossroads for the character. We have his public image completely tarnished. We have even what America means and what the people are trying to do post this whole Hydra Empire attack, invasion, all this stuff. We have everything in kind of shambles and disarray. The country is really kind of broken and divided and unsure, and the last thing they want to trust is Captain America, the shield, the flag, all this stuff. They're just really mistrustful. And we have Steve Rogers being the same old Steve Rogers, trying to be a hero, trying to make right his reputation wherever he can, and that's really where this whole run situates itself. I think that in general, the only real feedback I heard about this run before I went ahead and started reading the omnibus was that, oh, it's maybe a little bit political, or oh, Captain America doesn't even feel like he's the main character in his own book. And for me, both of those comments are kind of glaring or make me really want to second guess or kind of take a pause before diving in. But also knowing me, I wanted to read and evaluate the book for myself on its own merits, or at least how I interpreted them or perceived them based on my own taste. And I'm so happy I did, because let me tell you, this is my favorite Captain America run in the modern era since Ed Brubaker. And yes, that's a really big comparison. I do think there's still a big gap between Ed Brubaker in this run, at least in my mind, but that is also my gold standard for Captain America. But to say that this is my silver medal so far, and again, I am missing some, I have some gaps in my modern era Cap books. That being said, this is still the most fun I've had in a Captain America book in a while. I think seeing Captain America as a major underdog, kind of down on his luck as far as public perception and kind of figuring out how he wants to stand for what he believes in a way that encourages people, brings people hope, and gets them back to that American dream that really is beyond maybe even who's in office or what people are saying, and really just to the core of what makes American values great, and kind of just finding out that essence of who this character really is. I really, really loved it. I think that there's also a lot of really fantastic villains in this book, including but not limited to a reappearance of the Red Skull, Girl, Sin, Selene from kind of the X-Men franchise. That was a really fun wrinkle, and so many more. I really enjoyed it. There was a great battle with Taskmaster, for example. Anyway, the list goes on, but there were a lot of fun villains that were notable, and I think that overall this whole book feels like it tells one big story, beginning, middle, and end, and I really liked that. Yes, we had little splintered adventures or kind of mini arcs within this book, but everything kind of leads and flows down into one big story, which is essentially Captain America versus some of those villains I mentioned earlier, but it's also his kind of run at redemption, clearing his name, fighting for something, standing for what he really is again. Alongside him for this entire run are a group of women characters in the Marvel Universe known as the Daughters of Liberty, I believe. It's kind of this secret faction of heroes that are basically fighting for justice kind of behind the scenes. And this is a powerhouse team that includes Sharon Carter, the Invisible Woman, Spider-Woman, who else? Peggy Carter, that's a really fun reveal within this book, and so many more. They kind of come alongside Captain America and sort of his goals. They're kind of doing their own thing, but they end up allying themselves quite a bit throughout this book. I think that this might have been what people were talking about when they said that Captain America is really not even the main character in his own book. I think that that is way, way, way too much of a stretch, but the Daughters of Liberty and all those characters do play a predominant role throughout Ta-Nehisi Coates' run, along with characters like the Winter Soldier and Falcon to a lesser degree. But to me, this all felt like a big supporting cast, and I loved it. And seeing how Steve navigated with some of his supporting characters and these other heroines was really a lot of fun. It also gave a lot of agency to some of these other characters that I didn't know as much about, giving a lot more of these female characters time to shine. I think it just really worked. It felt really well balanced. It didn't feel shoehorned in. I didn't feel like there was this big agenda or it was too political. I just thought it was a fun list of characters fighting all these bad guys, and I thought it was really, really good. As far as the villains, I mentioned a few, but I left out a big one, and I believe her name is Alexa, I think Lucan or something like that. She was in a previous arc, but basically her husband kind of is sharing a soul or something with the Red Skull, and she's involved in kind of resurrecting him, but Red Skull basically hitches a ride. And we find out that she kind of defected from the Daughters of Liberty and was kind of this Russian agent at one point. Anyway, she teams up with Selene, the kind of X-Men vampire villain, and that's like the main villainous force throughout this book. Like I said, of course, there's other appearances. We have a whole squadron of nukes. We have, Sin, Crossbones, Taskmaster, and so many more. But those are kind of the major players here. And we have basically that group trying to bring Red Skull back to power and kind of dismantle America from the inside out, kind of covertly, especially in the wake of Hydra kind of dismantling. She's trying to build kind of a new situation here. It's really insidious. I love how the villain is kind of behind the scenes in many ways. There is kind of a Cold War aspect to the way the villain fights battles in this book, which I thought was really, really cool. As far as other plot points I think are worth mentioning, Thaddeus Ross, Thunderbolt Ross, is basically sort of a handler at one point who's sending Sharon Carter on different missions. And earlier on in the book, again, this is kind of a spoiler, but it's an important plot point, he is apparently murdered, and framed for the murder is, of course, you guessed it, Steve Rogers, Captain America. His public perception is already so low, but to now take out a general, he basically is a total pariah in the news, other than the small factions of people that still believe in him. He ends up turning himself in, and he gets thrown in prison. This is really when the Daughters of Liberty become more prominent in the story early on, as they're kind of doing missions outside of prison, and they're doing what they can to help Steve Rogers basically get liberated. He's in this Supermax prison, basically run by one of his villains, and that's including a bunch of villains as inmates. I thought this was fun. Anytime we have a Marvel superhero in a prison, it's always a really fun read for me. I know I've read so many like kind of Punisher, Daredevil kind of stories where they're in prison. To have Captain America, it was kind of a fun wrinkle. Anyway, that was a really fun plot line. We also have a really good focus on the Captain America Sharon Carter relationship. During this era, Sharon Carter is actually quite a bit older than Steve appears to be, but she's still really, really vibrant and has a ton of agency. Like I said, she's in that whole Daughters of Liberty situation, and she's just a genius. And she's still tactically really brilliant and trying to do all she can, even with the physical limitations of her body now that it's getting older. A big plot point we have, maybe toward the middle of the book, is actually her youth is restored and then some. I think in partial help from Shuri from Wakanda. Thought that was really cool. We also have a couple nods to Black Panther and Wakanda in this omnibus. Not a ton, but enough that was really fun, since I know Ta-Nehisi Coates also did an extensive run over in the Black Panther world. I've read a little bit of that run, mostly the second half, the beginning when they do kind of space Black Panther, but I've heard mixed things on that run. If you've read his run on Black Panther, definitely let me know in the comments. I really like how he depicted the Wakandan characters in this run, so definitely makes me curious to read more of that era. At any rate, going back to this omnibus, I think overall the art throughout it, we do have a couple different changing artists throughout this book, but it's overwhelmingly strong art. And I think even as the art changes hands, there's very few instances that it's a glaring artistic change where I felt totally thrown out of the narrative. It does maybe happen once or twice, but it's all really good. And the big illustrative changes we have as different artists show up, they're all really gifted, I feel like. And I think it realizes the world really well. The character models are all interesting and true. And overall, I just have no real complaints. I think in a Captain America book, one thing I look for is a good sense of motion and action, because his kind of hand-to-hand combat, the shield bouncing, all of that stuff, I really just like feeling that sense of motion in the comic book. And I think overall, this book does a pretty good job. I think the action sequences were a ton of fun, exciting, and I just really liked that. Another thing that I think is just worth noting, as an omnibus collector, I love whenever I see that full, brilliant cover page reproduced before each issue in a collection. It's a great way to just get a feel for what it's like opening that issue. I don't really like collections like the Jonathan Hickman omnibuses that save all the covers for the end. I understand it's to give you kind of a singular reading experience rather than stopping at each issue, but as someone who doesn't buy the single issues, I really like the feeling of knowing where I am kind of in the issue run. And so I love that not only do we get the covers reproduced, we also have it labeled which issue it is. So we know exactly where to index it and find it as far as when you see that cover. You're like, oh, this is issue 10. Oh, this is issue 11. Yes, a full table of contents with marked page numbers would have made that even more simple. But in a day and age when we have a lot of omnibuses that don't show what issue it even is, just the art, or has all the covers in the back, I love seeing a proper cover in front of an issue with the issue number. Just really, really nice. It makes it easy to navigate the book, especially upon reread, which I hope to do someday for this book. Another thing I enjoyed about this run, I just want to point out, is that we have Steve Rogers being Steve Rogers. We have that kind of valor and nobility to him, a man just really trying to do his best to lead and to fight for causes that are just, and to just do the right thing. I think after reading the Nick Spencer run, which I also enjoyed but for very different reasons, having that kind of Hydra Captain America, while it was really fun, I kind of underestimated how refreshing it would be to go back to a true blue Steve Rogers fighting for right. I really, really enjoyed seeing it. This is just the Captain America I love, just doing the right thing for the right reasons and just doing the best he can. Being a kind of scrappy underdog as well, with everything kind of against him, I think it was just really fun. The whole book, I have this feeling like I'm just rooting for him. I want him to clear his name. I want him to do the best he can. And he's kind of just humble about it. And I think it really just makes his character shine. I think overall, that's something else I like about Ta-Nehisi Coates' writing, is it feels very character driven. Yes, there's this great master narrative, beginning, middle, and end throughout this whole run. It's framed so well. It's paced so well. But the characters are what really just get it home for me. And I love that we not only have a great characterization for Captain America, our titular hero, but for all the Daughters of Liberty, for Winter Soldier, for Falcon, and the huge handful of villains we get. I love that we have so many familiar faces as far as Captain America villains. I like that we have some surprising villain choices. Like I said, Selene plays a really prominent role here, and I love seeing that. I love that they drew in kind of this Marvel, more X-Men based villain to show up. I think that they used her really, really well. She's kind of stealing souls to do this ultimate move for the villains. I won't go into that too much, but it's really fascinating, and I like how they use that character and kind of how she's like playing on like where America's at and trying to get back to core values and kind of manipulating the people. I just think it was really, really cool. And while, yes, I'm sure this book is a little bit political, I don't feel like any of the messages beat me over the head with any real political agenda or stance. It was just seeing a divided America and people really distrustful of America in general and just mistrustful of Captain America, and that was really the backdrop. And yes, there's maybe more commentary if you drill down, but I like that this was a book I could just enjoy without feeling like I had to navigate this minefield of different agendas. Yes, it has a very distinctive voice. Yes, it stands for something. Yes, it has its own themes and principles and values, and I think that that's a good thing, but I never felt just bogged down by it. So I really think that that's a perfect zone to be in modern comic books. At least for me as a reader, I love reading that. I don't like a book that has so much agenda to it in comics. I'm here for entertainment. I do like when you have a voice. I do like when they really have a stance and have a really clear vision. And I think that this just basically did that perfectly. I really enjoyed this run. I think it was also fairly short in comparison to some of the other books. Like I said, this omnibus, even with all the extras and stuff at the back, which we'll see momentarily, it didn't even break 700 pages. It is like a 30-issue run with that little bit of the free comic book day issue. So it's pretty concise, all things considered, but I think it's really strong for that. Like I said, it really has one big overarching story with all of these little instances and issues and mini arcs running through it. And in that way, it's also one of my favorite structures for a comic run and omnibus I've read recently. It wasn't perfect, though. I do see what people mean when they say that Captain America feels like he takes a backseat in his own book. I do really enjoy the inclusion of the Daughters of Liberty. I think it's a fantastic organization that really had some fun implications for the history within the Marvel Universe. And I think that all the characters they chose for that squad of characters were really, really great. Like Misty Knight is another one I completely forgot to mention is in that squad. Just really, really well balanced as far as that team goes. I do think I would have liked to see even more Captain America within this book, but I do think that overall it worked really well. I like also that Captain America is really trying to find what he stands for and trying to reveal that to the public again, trying to get that kind of public perception and trust back. I know the villains call him the Captain of Nothing, kind of saying the America he stands for doesn't exist, or it's broken, or he's broken, or whatever. And so that whole Captain of Nothing and that kind of haunting just moniker that a lot of the villains give him throughout this run, I think that that was just a really cool reinforcement of a lot of the themes within this book, the Captain of Nothing. But no, he's Captain America, but he's loyal only to the dream, just the truest form of what America could be and the values of fighting for right and all of that. And I like that. I like the kind of good versus evil stories here. A lot of the conflicts felt very modern and interesting and relevant, and I think that that was really fun. I think that people that are interested in Captain America should definitely consider this book. I do think that there are probably better on-ramps for the character. I think the Ed Brubaker run is probably a better place to start. In many ways, this feels like a good response to the Nick Spencer era, but if you're coming in blind for Captain America, there's probably a few things you should brush up on, as well as just knowing a good character base for the Captain America universe and Marvel universe in general. After the run, we got a good handful of extras, variant cover art, things like that. Really like this book. Like I said, it's not a huge omnibus, but it packed a lot of fun. It's probably the most fun I've had with a Captain America book in quite some time, and it's one I would highly recommend for Captain America fans out there and for general Marvel Comics fans. And now all that's left is to give this book a grade. For a fresh, innovative, and fun take on one of the most familiar Marvel mainstays, the Comic Book Report happily gives Captain America by Ta-Nehisi Coates a B+. This book has a lot going for it, a really great character-driven narrative, a self-contained story arc for the most part, a great and extensive supporting cast of heroes and villains, and overall just a fun ride. The art throughout changes hands, of course, but it's always really lush and beautiful. Conveys a great sense of motion, the fighting sequences are memorable, and overall this is a run I know I would like to go back to in the future. I love seeing Captain America down on his luck, and feeling like he was fighting to get back in public favor. It was a really unique position to station one of the most beloved Marvel heroes, and I really enjoyed it for that. I think Ta-Nehisi Coates had a really clear vision and message and thing to say with this book, and I think it was executed near perfectly. I don't think it really touches the Brubaker era, but really what does? This definitely gets a high recommend from me, but let me know what you think of this run in the comments, and until next time, this has been the Comic Book Report. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to give a like and maybe check out one of my other videos. Have a good one.